This is the Cyber Brisket Podcast, serving up what's hot in IT so your business doesn't get cooked.
Joining us today is Reginald Andre. Andre, founder and CEO of Arc Solvers, a South Florida-based cybersecurity, IT, and AI solutions firm recognized as one of the region's fastest-growing tech companies with nearly 20 years of experience at the intersection of technology and business. Andre is a trusted voice on cybersecurity resilience, digital transformation, and responsible AI adoption. Known for breaking down complex topics into real-world strategies, he helps organizations reduce cyber risk, confidently leverage emerging technologies. Andre, welcome to the Cyber Brisket Podcast.
Thank you so much, Chris, for having me.
Yeah, so I have some questions here for you, but I think before we get started, you've got 20 years experience. I'm really interested about how you got started.
Yeah, so my journey brings me back to back in probably 2002. I used to work at a store, electronics store called CompUSA. Do you remember that?
I remember CompUSA. My goodness. Okay.
Yeah, blast from the past. So for those of you listening that don't know, CompUSA is like a very similar store to like a Best Buy. They sell all sorts of electronics, computers, Wi-Fi, and things like that. And one day, this guy comes in and he buys shopping cart after shopping cart after shopping cart full of items, computers, TVs, Wi-Fi equipment, everything. And I helped him with all of this. And at the end of the transaction, he looked at me and he's like, I have no idea how to set this up for my home. And I looked back at him and I was like, wait, you just spent $35,000 for your house? I thought this was for your business or something. And he was like, no, I just moved from New York. I got an apartment and can you guys come to my home and set this up? And at the time, CompUSA didn't have like your modern day Geek Squad where they'll come and get that started. And I would always do work for my friends and family. So I said, sure, I'll come to your house and get everything set up. So he gives me his address and it said Miami South Beach.
Okay.
So I'm sure, Chris, you've been to that Miami South Beach. Well, here I am, 19 years old. And I grew up in Miami Gardens, and I had never been to Miami South Beach. So here I am that Saturday morning. He texts me his address, and I put it on the GPS, old school Garmin. And as I'm driving on the causeway, on the highway, this is actually my first time now being in this area. This is like Miami. If you ever seen like CSI Miami, and
yeah, you're in the fancy part of town now.
Yeah. So this is luxury. We're talking about yachts, and we're talking about I saw the cruise ships on the right hand side and the marina and the water. I mean, everything was super nice. I go up into his home, marble floors, everything top to bottom, A+, luxury. And I set up his computers and everything like that. And one of his buddies comes in and he's like, wow, who set this up for you? And he said, Andre. And he asked me to go to his house and set up the exact same thing. So fast forward 6 months later, the guy that I met at the electronics store, he's sending me all of his friends to set up their systems. And one day he calls me, he's like, hey, I didn't tell you this, but all my friends are ecstatic about you. You're a hard worker, you're diligent. I didn't tell you this, but I'm a retired 41-year-old multi-millionaire, and I want to start a business with you. I know you're going to school to become an English teacher. I was 19 years old going to school, just to be in education. And he says, I want you to slow down on going to school and let's start a business together. Whatever you're making at the electronics store, I'm going to double it and let's do it. So I call my mom and I tell her the whole story. And she was like, yes, go start the business with that man. This is why I left Haiti, for you to come to America to have that American dream. Start that business with him. So I slowed down on school. And we started a business, and fast forward about 8-9 years later, we are actually the kings of South Beach. We have everybody's coming. If you remember the blue screen of death, Chris, right?
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm still very familiar with it.
Yeah. So we're dealing with that. We now have 8 employees. We're doing 1 million in sales. I mean, we're rocking and rolling. The guy that I met at the electronics store 8, 9 years later, we have a full-fledged 8-person business, over 1 million in sales. And one day I go to him and I was like, hey, boss, I'm happy. My business card says vice president, my email address says managing partner. I'm happy, but actually, there's nothing in writing that actually says we're business partners. Can we go ahead and get that set up? And he was like, you know what? You're right. Let me go ahead and have the attorney draft up something. A couple of months later, he calls me to his office. He asked me to close the door. And Chris, he said, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to let you go.
Wow.
I worked 9 years, 18-hour days, building that business 7 days a week. And he lets me go because when he talked with his attorney was like, why the heck are you going to give him shares of the company? Just get rid of him and you'll own everything. And I wasn't even looking for a lot,
Sure.
just something for a little sweat equity. And I can remember, leaving the office and just devastated. This is now 2009.
I'm devastated just hearing this.
Yeah. And this is 2009. So this is right when the market's about to crash, the 0809 crash.
Right.
And I was making a lot of money, but as fast as the money was being spent, this is the rock and roll days, right? Mm-hmm. As fast as the money was being spent was this, how fast I was making it, as fast I was spending it. And he wouldn't even give me my last check. I only had $100 to my name. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, what am I going to do? And I remember that quote from the movie Rocky. I'm a big Rocky fan. And he said, it's not how hard you get hit, it's how you get back up. And I said, you know what? All right, I'm going to do this. So I ended up I had a home. I ended up foreclosing on it because I couldn't afford, the mortgage anymore. I ended up moving back to my mom's house. And I said, but you know what? I can do this myself. Yeah, he was the money man. He's the one who fronted everything. But he couldn't turn on a computer if his life depended on it. I was the brains behind it, and I was the one who was doing all the operations. And I said, I'm going to start a new company. And now I can proudly say 16 years later, we're recording this in April, 4 months in, 16 years, 4 months, 17 days, we have Arc Solvers. And we've, as you mentioned, we've been voted one of the fastest growing cybersecurity companies in South Florida. And we're rocking and rolling, providing, managed services and cybersecurity to the small businesses here in South Florida.
Wow. That is a heck of a story. What a comeback.
Yeah. Life is sometimes going to hit you, but it's all how you fall forward.
Got to appreciate that attitude, the resilience. And it's very clear that you made the right decision.
Yes.
Because look at your continued success. Because now, it's very clear where that all came from.
Right. Exactly. And, even though I got screwed at the end, but I'm blessed for that experience because I would have never been exposed to everything I did get exposed and everything that he taught me.
Wow. So that's, a bunch of hard lessons there for sure. So speaking of hard lessons, I would like to dive into the interview a little more and talk about how you guys are delivering your services. So speaking of hard lessons, what's one hard lesson about cybersecurity or digital transformation that most leaders still underestimate today?
One of the things that I always get from prospects and even some customers of ours is that, the last guy, he was doing IT. He wasn't doing my cybersecurity. I had my business for 15 years. It's never going to happen to me. I'm too small to get hacked. And my answer always is when they say I'm too small to get hacked, I says, no, you're not too small to get hacked. You're too small to make the news because small businesses are getting hacked every day. It's just the local TV stations are concentrating on when the hospitals and the schools and the government and the big corporations. But your small business owner, you are going to get hacked because especially if you're not doing anything, why not, right? Why wouldn't the hackers come after you? So I think that's the biggest thing is even in our industry today, it's one of those things. It's kind of like insurance, right? It's like you don't value it until you use it. And when a system is working fine, and now you're having to shift the mindset of a client to say, I understand for the last 10 years, your emails have been good. You've never had a business email compromise. I understand you never had ransomware, but things have changed and cyber threats are way up. And especially your industry, Mr. Customer, look at the statistics. It's only a matter of time. And that's kind of one of the things that it's more of an education that we've had to do, but just changing the client's mindset into when you're comparing, our services versus the guy down the street, especially in South Florida, where we're very saturated, you have to understand that, cybersecurity, we're a cybersecurity first company.
Sure. So while you were talking, it got my mind thinking. I came up with some ideas that I'd never had before. So, well, one of them is, I have had a discussion with other colleagues about prospects, potential clients, and clients talking about how maybe they're too small to get hacked. And
Mhm.
what you said about them being, they're not too small, just too small to make the news. That's absolutely right. Because if you look at any of the stats or any of the breaches, you see that the majority of the breaches happen because there's more smaller businesses than there are larger businesses.
Exactly.
And so there's more smaller breaches happening than larger breaches all the time. And for every size business, there is an appropriately sized criminal somewhere. So, it's, yes, there's going to be big groups of high level criminals that are going to be going over doing these like very noticeable breaches of very well known organizations. But at the same time, there's pickpockets that are running around on the street, and
Exactly.
they're just grabbing things out of pockets. And I guarantee you, there's a whole lot more pickpocket offenses than there are like major top level offenses.
Exactly. It's just when you're golfing with your friend is never going to admit, like, oh man, we got hacked last week and it's terrible. Like, that's something that you keep close to your chest because you're ashamed of it. And typically, you only find out that a company got hacked is when all of a sudden you get some weird DocuSign that you never asked for, and then you email them back, hey, what's this? And then they tell you, we got hacked. But if they never got that DocuSign email out, they would have put it right under the rug. They wouldn't tell anybody, especially in regulated markets. There's some rules about that, but in markets where they don't have to tell, they're not telling.
They have to report it. Yeah.
Yeah, but unregulated markets, they are not telling their vendors, they're not telling their employees, they're not even telling their customers, which I think is detrimental.
Oh, for sure. Well, especially when you're talking about if there's people's information that's being leaked, which is exactly why a lot of these regulated industries are obligated to report breaches. I know that I get these notifications from large companies when breach happens, and there's like some kind of a class action settlement, and you get an email saying that you've got X number of years of credit monitoring or something like that they've been forced to sponsor.
I always wonder with those credit monitorings, why won't you allow me to stack it? I already got AT&T gave me one, Comcast gave me one, my hospital gave me one, but I got to use it in 12 months. Let's stack it, man. We got to get some lobbyists for that.
I got you. Yeah, make it consecutive.
Yeah, yeah.
Very good. Okay. I got another question here for you
Sure.
regarding your company here, Arc Solvers. And you've grown rapidly and gained regional recognition. As companies scale, where do you most often see them introduce new cyber risk without realizing it?
Yeah, so typical small business starts off with the owner, founder, and they grow and they start adding employees. And unfortunately, the employees are the biggest risk. And that's where you hire a new employee, you give them no proper cyber orientation. You don't tell them, like, look what happened the other day with, I believe it was HCA, where it was a phone call, a simple phone call, and they were able to, and let me elaborate, specifically what happened is the bad guy saw on LinkedIn that an employee started in the company. Then the bad guy just said, okay, we're going to call as we're the IT support and just say, hey, Miss Karen, congratulations. We know you just started with our company. I'm Brian with IT support. I just need to get into your computer to do one more update. Do you have a quick second?
Sure.
Well, IT is never going to ask you to go to logmein.com to get access to the computer. And I think as business start to expand, the proper training is not done with the employees, and the employees are the biggest risk, right? I think it's about 94% of hacks come through phishing emails. And now how we have the bad guys saying we're using AI and ChatGPT, they're using AI and ChatGPT. So that Nigerian prince that we all know, he knows how to spell now. He has his grammar good. And now that Nigerian prince is going to send some type of some email that looks very convincing, and
Sure.
he's going to trick the employee, and the employee is going to click on something, it's going to execute a file, and then all havoc is going to happen.
Right. So just to dovetail on that, or to reinforce that, yeah, the employees, I absolutely agree. They are on the front line, because ultimately, we can put as much security on the system as we want to, and hacking these days, with all the security that we have, is kind of tough. But ultimately, the computers are at the mercy of the people using them. So, the easiest way to get into a computer system now is through the employees. If you can convince them to take an action that they may not necessarily understand, you can let all kinds of folks in.
Easiest way to get your items in your car stolen is by leaving the door unlocked, right?
Sure.
Going back to the pickpocket, they're going for the lowest hanging fruit. They don't want to go through this whole thing. If they can make a quick smash and grab, that's great. It's because if you now hack a hospital, FBI's looking after you, Homeland Security's trying to figure out what's going on, who's the perpetrator, and all of that. But if you go after a 10, 20, 30 employee company, go ahead and call the FBI and see how that works out for you. They're like, yeah, we'll call you. Just, give us a couple of years. We'll get to you.
Yeah, right. All right. So moving on here, let's touch on AI. It's accelerating faster all the time. More organizations, or what is this question? AI is accelerating faster than most organizations can govern it. Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. In your
Yeah.
view, what separates companies adopting AI responsibly from those creating unseen ethical or security liabilities?
It's a great question, because what we're seeing now in businesses, and at the end of the day, it always starts from the top. It's got to be a boardroom decision. It's got to be a CEO decision. And if there is no foundation, if there's no standard, if it's not in the employee handbook, what you're going to find is you're going to find some people using Microsoft Copilot because it's already, they're advertising it so much on Windows. You're going to then see some people use, ChatGPT, Claude, and all of these things. And then you're going to have chaos because the data is everywhere. And typically in a company, what we're seeing employees in kind of three different levels. The bottom level, bottom 1/3, let's just say, they're not touching AI at all. They're afraid of it. They don't understand it. They got a good 5 more years till they retire. They're like, let me just do it the way I'm doing it. I'm good. Then you have that middle third. They got ChatGPT. They may have a description, rewrite my emails. I'm going to put a LinkedIn post. Let me just go ahead and see how they want it. I have a spreadsheet. Let me go ahead and upload it. Let me have it do some basic tasks. And then you have the top third, and they are the power users. They are uploading every single thing, socials, account information. I mean, they're getting what they normally would work 8, 9 hours. They're now doing it in 4 hours, but they have no guardrails, and they're using it wrong. Although they're using it efficiently and they're using it for a good purpose, but they are using it wrong. And that's what we're seeing in businesses right now, is that because there's no policy. Perfect example, Chris, the other day I had a client and the CEO was like, no AI, nothing. And we went to, we were doing some audits and stuff, and we ran the tool, And the tool, basically, there was about 30 computers, and about 24 of them, because it was basically logging all the websites, about 24 people were actually using some type of AI. And the CEO was like perplexed. So he went to the bookkeeper and said, hey, look, I'm seeing our IT guy is saying that all of these AI tools are being used. Let me see in QuickBooks the line item for technology and show me specifically where are we paying for all of these AI tools, because I said no AI tools. But guess what? Everybody was just putting it on their personal card. It's $20. Hey, if I can pay $20 a month and I can be more efficient with my time, all right, I don't need to expense it. I don't need to give the boss the receipt. And
Sure.
then we found that basically everybody was just doing their own things. And when everybody's doing their own things and there's no policies, then you're basically uploading all of that sensitive information into the AI. Who knows what it's doing with it?
Yeah. Yeah. So folks are bringing their own personal AI to the table. They're exfiltrating data from company systems to feed them into these various different things, and before you know it, your IP is all over the place.
Exactly. And then what we are now seeing is that, just like how we see someone's, let's just say their LinkedIn gets hacked or their Microsoft gets hacked,
Mhm.
now their AI is getting hacked because no one's enforcing two-factor authentication.
There
Nobody
you
has
go.
a conditional policy that says ChatGPT could never log in Africa because none of our employees live in Africa or Jamaica, wherever.
The
And then
Nigerian prince.
the Nigerian prince. And then what are they doing? They're going to the settings and there's an export where you can export your entire history of conversations, any
Wow.
uploads and stuff like that. And they're like, all right, thanks for the kings to the kingdom. We got what we need. We want the data. And okay, so you uploaded an Excel spreadsheet of your top 20 clients, and your company name is, let's just say Moving USA. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new domain name, and instead of Moving USA with a V, I'm going to make it a W. And now, since you had
Yep.
uploaded your top 30 customers, I'm going now to just go back to your top 30 customers and let them know that they need to click on this email to reset whatever. And that's what's happening now. So again, a lot of these hackers, they're just getting in right through the front door. And it all starts with the top, the board of directors, the CEO. There needs to be governance for this.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, the same thing as what we were talking about before with the last question. There needs to be, for all of your users, there has to be an acceptable use policy, just as a base to hand them something and to give them access to a system. And then in this case with the AI, you have to have an AI acceptable use policy. What does the company what does the company say can and can't be used? How can you use it? That kind of thing, because I mean, someone could potentially do something that could put uh, the whole company at risk.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like how you have the employee but even when I mention employee handbook, we're not talking about giving your employee a PDF or a document, 20 pages, and they're going to be like, yeah, okay, okay. No, this needs to be culture.
Hmm.
This needs to be, you have your every monthly meetings, your quarterly meetings. Your team leader needs to be, or your IT, security person, IT person, they need to be talking about this. They need to be saying, hey guys, just a reminder, these are our policies. Yes, you can use this AI, or this is the list of AIs that we can use, but it must be registered to the company's name. It must be, it must be the paid version. If you want to experiment, okay, fine. You want to use this whole new Claude Anthropic that can do a lot of these things. We embrace that, but only this folder, only these files. So it's
Sure.
just yeah. So and there was a MIT study that said that I think it was about 80% of AI experiences fail. So basically, someone says, "Oh, this is this new shiny AI tool. Let's try it and let's see," and it fails because there was no strategy behind it. So yes, allow your employees to bring suggestions, but in the boardroom, we got to say, okay, the marketing team, these are the two tools you can use. These are the X tools you can use. Because another thing too is you're gonna have a budget creep. 2 years ago, there was no line item for AI. Now I'm seeing some people, some of our clients where their AI budget is almost how much I'm charging per month to manage their services because they've got Zoom, they've got Copilot, they've got Perplexity, and a lot of times they're just trying it. Oh, let me just do the free trial. I'll put in the credit card number, and nobody ever tells the boss they no longer use Perplexity, but Perplexity is still charging $30 a month, right? So like,
Oh yeah, yeah. Once you start that subscription,
yeah,
who's going to come back and audit that?
yeah. So that's a budget risk, that's a company risk because now they're paying for subscriptions that they're no longer using, or even worse, what I've seen is a client called us and said, "Hey, what's this? Let's just again, I'm going to pick on Perplexity. It wasn't Perplexity, but we got this Perplexity, but we don't even know who's using it. And it turns out it was an employee that left 4 months ago, but he used the general company card. So again, when you start having people register with these AI tools with their personal, just like an office subscription, IT is supposed to manage that. And we should be managing, and there are business accounts where you can assign licenses and you can then revoke licenses. And that should be part of your, onboarding, offboarding list and so forth.
Yeah, when it comes to adopting AI or implementing AI in an organization, I'm going to echo what you said there. With there not being a strategy and that maybe not necessarily leading to favorable outcomes. I mean, really, if you don't have a goal, then you don't really have anything to shoot at. So a lot of people will look at AI and think of it as like maybe a magic bullet or something like that. Like, hey, I'm going to get this thing, it's going to do all this stuff. And, I hear all these other stories. But I mean, the reason people find success with AI, in my experience, is because they have a specific application or a specific outcome that they're looking to achieve with a process that they've developed inside the organization.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right. Let's get this next question out of the way here. You're known for translating complex technical concepts into real world strategies. What's the most common misconception executives have about cybersecurity that actively makes their organizations less secure?
Yeah, so I'm not going to pick on any names because they can be future sponsors of your shows, but there are some cybersecurity tools that do very good jobs of marketing to the consumer.
Sure.
And a lot of times, and not only a lot of times, but they also sell directly to the consumer. So they don't even have to use our services, where traditionally you would have your managed service provider install those tools and monitor it. So there's a false sense of security when you have one of these tools on a computer, because all the tool is going to do is basically say yes or say no. But if there's something suspicious, there's nobody in the background that can kind of put two and two together, that can say, you know what, John over here, he downloaded a file and also his IP address is showing in another country. Maybe there's something wrong. Or John opened up his emails here. I'm in Miami, but then all of a sudden he's having a login in Texas. Is there something wrong? So I think that's going to be something that a lot of times is a false sense of security. Like, oh, I have this tool, therefore all my needs. I mean, there's even cable providers that are now. I talked to a guy yesterday. I needed a quote, and him even forgetting what I do was basically, yeah, we can give your customer cybersecurity, and they're talking about just putting an extra layer on the firewall. But again, the way this sales guy for this ISP is selling it is, right, oh, we're giving cybersecurity to the entire thing, and basically he would have probably told the customer, you don't need a company like Arc Solvers or Engler IT because we can provide the cybersecurity. Well, first of all, go ahead and call any provider and see how long you're going to wait on hold versus being able to text one of us, right, when there's a problem. And then the second thing I was going to say was I forgot actually, so I'll bring it back to you. It was a really good point, but I drew a blank on that.
You want me to hit the question again?
Yeah, it was about the misconceptions, but I can't. Yes. It was another point, but I missed it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. The most common misconception executives have about cybersecurity that actively makes their organizations less secure? So
Thank
like
you. Thank you.
you already touched on people selling security and then okay, check, I bought security. And it's like, well, that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, yeah. Now I remember we have to stop talking about tools, right? We need
Sure.
to
Yeah.
start talking about what happens if your business is down for 24 to 72 hours.
Yeah. What's your
That's the
ISP going to do about
question.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the questions I'm starting to ask my clients. Like we're going this into the second quarter of this year. For the clients that book our quarterly business reviews, I'm asking them, how long can you be down? If Microsoft went down, although I know 99.9, whatever, but 3 days out of the year, they are down. What is your plan? How are you communicating to your clients? Do you have a backup email where you can just quickly send something to the clients? Maybe your logistics where time is money. And if those communications are not happening, what happens if your cell phone goes down? These major ISPs now or major cell phone providers, they have an option that says if they detect no dial tone, it can go to a cell phone, right? So at least your customers are continue to communicate. Do you have a plan where if your website or your phone number or your email did go down because of an outage? How many times did we get outages this year, right? Even when OpenAI had a few outages, does your marketing person or somebody that has access to the social media already have a pre-printed, kind of, hey, everybody, we're down, but for now, this is our email, this is our backup phone number. And can your business afford to be down for 24 to 72 hours? Like hospitals, for example, they have a system where they go back to paper and pen and they train their nurses on this to say, all right, we know you're used to using this fancy EMR tool, but we're going to bring, Sally here from the 1970s, and she's going to show you how it used to be with paper and pen. And you have
Sure.
to train your employees this. If they couldn't log into their systems, how do they continue operating? Because
Yeah. It's not like the patients are going to stop coming in. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, you have to divert them to other hospitals, you have to have MOUs and things like that. So that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, yeah, I hear it. So as you were speaking, it was reminding me about a conversation that I had earlier this year with a good colleague of mine, where we were discussing the difference between a vendor and a partner. And when you're talking about the internet service provider coming in and saying they're going to provide you with security, they're being a vendor. They're not being a partner. And along with all these other folks that are advertising directly to small businesses and individuals, they're really just selling something that just checks off a box. Yes, I'm selling that. We're doing that for you. And they care not about the outcome that gets produced as a result of that. And so I remember that whole thing being described as a very loose or a very uh, low value of exchange or something along those lines, where it's like, okay, well, I'm selling you XYZ. I sold, I'm doing XYZ, and by the way, here's my bill. And in the moment you want to talk about outcomes with them, they're not interested because the outcome is that I provided you with this line item and that line item and that line item. It's like, by gosh, if I treated my clients that way, I don't think I'd ever have a relationship that lasted for any considerable amount of time.
I don't know how some companies get away with it. Like me and you, like you're saying, we would have never been able to get away with that. But we're seeing that, and one of the things that we're talking to our clients about is that let's talk about that outcome. Even just going back to that plan, do you have cyber insurance? Because please know, Mr. Customer, I can do everything right, right? Just like how George Bush one time said, the bad guys have to just be right that one time, right? The terrorist has to be right that one time. And that's all it takes to bring down the house. And we, educate our clients and say, please know, I'm going to do the best I can to protect you, but you need to have that insurance. And if you're, depending on your business model, you may need to have on your cyber insurance a loss of business, reimbursement. What if a couple of years ago here in Broward County, a major hospital, their payroll system went down. They could not pay over 3,000. They were actually zelling employees, right? So like, and they just didn't have another way. Well, maybe you should keep some checks in the safe for the day you're in. This is all the stuff, because when we're talking about technology, we're talking about cybersecurity, we're talking about, yes, blue screen of death, but we're also talking about ransomware. We're talking about, if you got ransomware, there's a high chance it may just be cheaper and more functional to replace your computers. Especially if you get your cyber insurance involved, they may want to take that computer and that hard drive as evidence because they want to do further investigation. And if they take that computer, just like a crime scene, they take that evidence, you got to replace it. And they may hold it for 2-3 months. So what are you going to do? So make sure, you have a local vendor or, the cash in place to be able to quickly, know all of the things. So there's all of this planning. And I know it sounds a little doomsday, and maybe I should have brought my aluminum foil hat, but this is the real world that we're living in. And this is the type of calls that we're getting in from prospects that like, hey, this is what happened. And now what do I do? And it's a very, and it's not like this stuff started yesterday, right? It's been happening, but again, I'm too small to get hacked. No, that's the mindset.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And then you have the so just to reiterate what you were touching on here is a lot of the misconceptions that folks are running into is they're being sold a bill of goods that and the salesman may be really good at painting a nice picture for them, but at the end of the day, they're not necessarily going to be a partner. They're not necessarily going to tie themselves to any kind of an outcome that gets produced. And they're definitely not going to take the time to make sure that they have a complete security, a complete layered security approach like you and I would. And they're also not going to spend any time with them talking about business continuity, incident response, or to have any of those plans to help them develop any of those things either.
Exactly. And that's the difference between the partner and the vendor. The vendor's just trying to make the quick sale, go to the next one. The partner, I would say, is obviously we don't want always to have our clients call us on their cell, but they at least can know that, okay, look, if I went through the normal processes and now I still have a problem, can I shoot your text? Can I get on your calendar, and things like that? And I think, and that's where, the value of our type of services comes in.
Sure, it's a whole lot different when you have one hand to shake.
Yes, and one ear to pull.
All right, last question I got for you.
All right.
Let's see if we can't be fortune tellers here.
All right.
Looking ahead 3 to 5 years, what do you believe will be the next major blind spot for organizations when it comes to cybersecurity and emerging technology?
Yeah, so definitely going to tie into AI. I think we should also talk a little IoT, which is Internet of Things. One thing that, I go to clients when I do site visits and stuff like that, and I look up and I'm like, wow, who put that there? You have a camera system? Oh, Hype Vision. That's the one from China that the federal government says you shouldn't be purchasing anymore. Why didn't you tell me you were upgrading your, because we don't do cameras. So like, why didn't you tell me you're upgrading your camera? So at least, So I think, most businesses now inside their offices, they have TVs. They connect the TVs to the Wi-Fi, but there's no regulation on TVs. Samsung, whoever, I'm not going to say any names because, but all of these manufacturers.
Don't get us sued, Andre.
No, not sued. I'm looking for sponsorship dollars, man. We got to put a TV next to your name there. And plus your walls aren't fully patched yet. So I'm just trying to help you there. So these TV manufacturers, they have what is called firmware updates, which is basically updates for the TVs, just like how your computer has updates. Well, they don't have
like every appliance, like a TV, home appliance, like anything that hooks up to the internet is a computer.
Exactly, and that's my whole point: is that your devices are on your network, and if these devices aren't getting the updates and they're not being managed by the IT person, that's how the hackers are going to get in. There was actually just a bulletin out from the federal government that says they were, I don't know if it's immediately or they're going to maybe make it in a couple of months, but they basically said that routers, which is how your internet is spread throughout your home or your office. You will no longer be able to buy routers out that's manufactured outside of the United States. And the reason did you see that one, Chris?
No, I didn't see that, but that sounds like a really good move.
Yeah, 20 years later. But yeah, so basically the federal government has found that, these routers, there's chips in there, there's intelligence gathering in there because all the information travels through a router. Maybe at your home, for the viewers, you may be thinking of it as a modem, but same concept. But let's just to make things easier. And what they found is that these, Chinese routers have listening for, again, to keep it simple, devices. So every time you go on the internet, it's gathering all of that information and then sending it to an adversary. So the United States has made a rule that says home consumer devices can no longer be purchased or no longer be purchased in the United States if it's not made in the United States. So all that Temu stuff and eBay stuff that you sometimes see, because why is that important? We live in a work from home, right? I'm working from home today. Sally's working from home today. So here, IT put all the necessary tools on the computer, put the big firewalls at the corporate, but then Sally purchased a $30 57-inch Temu TV, and now all of a sudden that TV or that router is now hacked, and now the bad guy is like, all right, I got all day to just try to break into this corporate computer because nothing can, in a sense, stop me. So that's one of my predictions is that you're going to have as more devices, your microwave, your toaster, all of these devices that we're seeing goes online. The washer and dryer now has Wi-Fi. That's going to be point of entries for the bad guy to now get into our systems.
Oh yeah, I remember hearing a story from a fellow on another podcast talking about how he was monitoring the traffic that was going in and out of his house, and he had a vacuum or some other appliance,
Right.
in one of these smart devices connected to the Wi-Fi, and every day it was reaching out to a server in China. And so then the question is, well, why is it that my washing machine is reaching out to China every day?
Right. Exactly.
What's the purpose for that?
So another prediction I have is that on cybersecurity side, we are going to, I don't want to say disappear, but our roles in companies will be less. And let me explain what I mean by that. Right now, Chris, when was the last time you had a client call you because they got a blue screen of death or the little wheel on the Mac, stopped, right? Compared to 10 years ago, we are getting less support calls because Windows.
Or those things, yeah. I mean, things are, the quality and the smaller problems are starting to get weeded out.
Exactly. And we're not getting as much calls as, oh, my printer's not working, because they're, to the printers, what's the word? Well, the good thing is printers
To
are
their
now,
credit.
yeah, to their credit, thank you. To their credit, they're making them more sturdier. So businesses, I would say about 30 employees or less, are going to start questioning the bills that we're sending out, that they're going to be like, well, nothing ever breaks. We hardly are calling them as much. We're not even seeing them. Why do we need IT? And they're going to try to go back to what you call the break fix model. When something breaks, we'll call you, because they're getting less problems on their computers. Their computers are actually working, right? Thank you, Microsoft. So I think that's going to be a blind spot for business owners, because they are now mixing the whole IT and cybersecurity. And then when something happens, they're going to realize, oh my gosh, I don't have cybersecurity. Because even look at, like, for example, Microsoft Windows Defender. When you set up your computer out of the box, they're already telling you, hey, you have Windows Defender. You don't need, something else that someone else is trying to sell you. So I think that's just another prediction. I think that managed service providers for a certain segment of clients. Definitely if it's 10 employees, I think the sweet spot, I would say in the last few years, the sweet spot was always that 10 to 30, but I think it's going to be a harder sell for us managed service providers for that employee, the company with 10 employees. And I think we're going to have to go higher, but I think it's also not going to be good because those businesses with 10 to 30 employees, they're going to think they're saving money, but then they're going to realize it's way more expensive. It's kind of like, the cure, or, like, do you
Yes,
exercise?
prevention. Yeah, prevention and cure. So like an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And some people are going to pay Russian roulette and they're going to be able to, all right, for 10 years, I haven't had major IT issues. And instead of spending $3,000 a month, 36,000 a year, I was able to only spend 5,000. And for some people, it's going to work. But for some other people, they're going to get ransomware. They're going to get cyber attack. They're going to lose their customer trust. They're going to have lawsuits, and it's not going to be good for them.
Yeah, downtime costs more than a lot of people realize. I mean, your operations stop, but none of your bills do. So
Exactly.
it gets real bad real quick. But I think I can see what you're saying here, and a lot of the things that I have thought about when I kind of start to make my predictions about the future is that a lot of our day-to-day operations will be ceded to AI to a certain
Yeah.
degree.
Yeah.
And it's going to be our job to figure out how that's going to work. Because at the end of the day, you still got to have people behind the scenes doing, so like, in other words, all the activity that we're engaged in right now, more or less still needs to take place in the future. I
Mhm.
think that I foresee the difference being that a lot of those things are going to be automated by AI and workflows.
Right.
And it's going to be our job to develop those things on our own behalf. And then I think that will relay, or clients will realize that in in two ways. One, more efficiently delivered service, less downtime. And I imagine because there's going to be a lot less manual things involved, a lot less people involved, that we're going to see a lot of savings too.
Yeah, exactly.
So like your ability and my ability to scale once we have built these tools to help multiply our efforts are going to be tremendously increased.
Absolutely. And there's a famous book called Who Moved My Cheese, right? And you've
Who
heard of
moved
that
my
one?
cheese? I don't know who moved my cheese.
Oh, it's an awesome book. It's an awesome book, but it's just really about, not staying stagnant. And in all industries, I think, technology is the one industry that you cannot stay stagnant. A plumber, water's always going to go down, right? Never up in
Yes.
a sense, right? Gravity. But I think for us, we have to just. I'm taking a AI class right now. I'm always on YouTube when I'm driving and stuff like that, just listening to just different, podcasts and things like that. So I think as technologists, we just can't see ourselves as providing IT or the traditional IT to our clients. We have to evolve. And I guess I gotta update my hat here, and not just can't put cyber. I gotta put the AI word in there or something
Yeah.
like.
Yeah, really good. Andre, I think we're kind of at time here. So this has been a really good conversation. Real pleasure spending time with you, getting to know you a little better, and wish you all the best. Looking forward to
That.
seeing you more in the future.
All right, Chris. See you soon.